Welcome. You're listening to The Best of Investing. I'm your host, Edward Brown. My two co-hosts are not here right now, but that's okay because we're going to have a guest we're going to introduce in just a minute here. Our phone number is 888-912-1190. Use that number to answer the trivia questions for a 5-pack tanning certificate given away during the show. That certificate's not sponsored by the radio station, but by Tan Bella Tanning Salon with 2 locations in San Francisco and 1 in Marin. Today's trivia theme is early American history. Now, today we have a special guest, Jack Duffley of Duffley Media, LLC. Jack, welcome to The Best of Investing.
Thanks for having me, Edward. Appreciate it. We'll see who's going to win that tanning certifictive.
Yeah, hey, you know what? Those certificates are worth over $100. So,
Good
get
deal.
your tan on. The summer's coming here. So I'll give the audience a little quick bio here. Jack is a commercial real estate attorney who moved from Chicago to Houston in 2022. And within months of moving to Houston, he bought his first small business, a carpet and steam cleaning business, doing about $300,000 per year in revenue. So first, I got to ask you, why the move from Chicago to Houston?
Sure. Well, I mean, the main reason my wife got a job down here, we both grew up in Chicagoland. She was in the city, I was in the suburbs. We met down at the University of Illinois in the middle of the state before heading back up to Chicago, where we lived for a couple of years before she was wrapping up her grad school. I went to law school in Chicago. She ended up getting a nice job down here in Houston. And the firm that I was working at, the law firm I was working at, had an office in both Chicago and Houston. So they let me move. We were kind of looking outside Chicago as well. So a bunch of factors there, I guess.
I gotta say that the best thunderstorms are in May in Houston. Oh, they're awesome. In California, we just don't get that kind. So I've only been to Houston once, and it was just phenomenal. Loved it.
Yeah, May was intense this year for sure. April was excellent. It's my first full year through living here now. I moved back in August of this previous year in 2022. So almost through a full year now. So
August in Houston is a little warmer than
it was about 103 when I was arriving.
Yeah, it's definitely nice and hot and humid. It'll keep you nice and skinny. Now the thing is, you're a commercial real estate attorney, but within the first few months of moving to Houston, you bought a small business, a carpet and steam cleaning business. Okay, that's totally different than a law practice. So what happened?
It's a good question. I originally come from kind of a real estate background, I guess. I've bought a few properties here and there. I wouldn't call myself a mogul by any means, but that's kind of where I got my start in investing in general. And when I was going to law school, it was with the perspective of being an investor. I would say investor first. And then when I was picking a major to study, it was like, okay, what major would help me eventually get to this end goal of having most of my time being spent towards investing? At least that's kind of how I was thinking. Law seemed to fit my skill set pretty well. So with that in mind, I started off buying a few properties here and there, got into stock investing as well, especially in the last couple of years. But just given where prices have gone with so many things, especially real estate, it's definitely a lot tougher to find a great cash flowing deal like it might have been a few years back. So, some of those difficulties in mind, not that you can't find great deals now, but I was just looking for ways to really catapult my cash flow position a lot further, especially looking at the long term. And I think one of the best ways to do that, if you have the time and are willing to take some risks, is in the small business space. I didn't really understand that you could actually buy 100% of a small business on a relatively open market, just like you might buy a house in many cases. And there's lots of financing options available as well, which we can get into.
Let me interrupt you for a second. So are you basically talking about buying it no money down? Is that effectively what you're talking about?
You could do that. You might have to get a little bit creative, but even so, with something like an SBA loan, that's a Small Business Administration, you can buy a business for usually 10% down, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Not every business will qualify, but many will. It's a pretty arduous process to get that loan, but it's going to be fixed rate for some decent term, call it 7 to 10 years, 25 years in the case of a deal that has a lot of real estate involved. So you got great financing there. You can also look at private money, or what I did for this business is actually used my salary at the time to qualify for personal loans and use that to kind of finance the purchase that way. So You could get pretty creative with it, and that's before we even talk about something like seller financing, which
Yeah,
is
exactly.
very common in real estate, but
Yeah.
it can apply to businesses as well. It's very common in business purchases.
Absolutely. I guess I know somebody here who sold a carpet cleaning business, basically. So it's
Oh,
exactly what you're talking about. And I
there you
want to
go.
talk more about that when we come back from break. Before we do, though, I want to make a quick mention here for the Tahoe Lakeshore Lodge in Lake Tahoe. A couple of 100 feet worth of beachfront property. You got to check them out. It's a beautiful lodge in Lake Tahoe, TahoeLakeshoreLodge.com. And we're going to go to our first trivia question. And again, the rules, Jack, since it's your first time as a guest with us, if you know the answer, wait till we come back from break because we want to get the audience a shot. And the theme is early American history. All right. So Christopher Columbus' voyage to the Americas in 1492 opened up a new era in world history. What country sponsored his expedition? Call 888-912-1190. The first caller with the correct answer is going to win the tanning certificate from Tan Bella Tanning Salon with 2 locations in San Francisco and 1 in Marin. And again, the certificate is worth over $100. So it's a nice little gift, especially since this is May and we're getting into the summer months. So again, here's the trivia question. Christopher Columbus, his voyage to the Americas in 1492 opened up a new era in world history. What country sponsored his expedition? All right, stay with us. You're listening to The Best of Investing. Don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to The Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with my special guest, Jack Duffley of Duffley Media LLC. And we'll get into the media part of that in just a minute here as well. All right, our first trivia question. Christopher Columbus's voyage to the Americas in 1492 opened up a new era in world history. What country sponsored his expedition? All right, Jack, now you can answer if you know the answer.
Sure. The Italians weren't interested, so he went off to the Kingdom of Spain at the
Spain,
time.
yes,
and
with
they
was it Ferdinand and
sponsored the
Isabel?
deal.
Yeah, no, it worked out pretty well. He came back with some pretty good. That's pretty gutsy of them to say, yeah, we have no idea where you're going, but yeah, you seem like a nice guy. Sure, come back with some treasure.
An ego thing. I don't know. They give it a shot. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. And actually, here's a little non-trivia question, but a little trivia. I remember, a lot of people have bashed Christopher Columbus in the last, 15, 20 years, whatever it was.
Of course.
They hear all these stories about him being, evil to the indigenous people. But when you read what really happened and you read some of his journals and some other stuff, effectively what had happened was there were, and I can't remember the name of the other tribe, but there was a very nice group of indigenous people who he got along with fabulously. And they warned Christopher Columbus, don't go to, X area because there's some really mean indigenous people. They didn't call them that. I'm just using it for this purpose.
Sure.
And they're killing us like crazy. And Christopher Columbus goes, I'm not going to stand for that. So he went over. And so when you hear of him genocide or any of that kind of stuff, he didn't wipe them all out. In fact, he ended up taking a couple of them back to Spain to have them explain why they were being mean to these other indigenous people. So a lot of people don't know that,
It's a mixed bag. A lot of those old sources are pretty weird because there's just so few that are, they're actually preserved, and a lot of them are on the Spanish side. So it's kind of it's weird because obviously, Cristobal, he's not gonna disparage himself, but so you gotta just look at the bias from both ways. But it's always more nuanced than whatever the media will portray.
People rewriting history, though, you kind of figure, there's a little bit more of an agenda nowadays. All right, so we have our special guest Jack Duffley here now. I got to ask you with regard to, how did you come upon a cleaning business? And interestingly enough, the guy who cleans our carpets at our house sold his business to somebody. And when you think about it, it's somewhat of a personal business because, there's good carpet cleaners and there's not so good ones. So when you're coming in as the new kid in town, so to speak, you're basically buying a book of business, aren't you?
Yeah. It's not so much that you're the new kid in town. I think if you were starting from scratch, absolutely. But the thing about buying a business is you're getting a jogging start is how I like to think of it. So long as you buy a okay one. And the one that I bought had a nice local reputation. It's been in business since about 2016. So there's a little bit there, as a couple employees. And yeah, really with any service business, yes, ultimately what it really comes down to, it's a simple model. You got to show up on time. You do whatever that service is. There's a reason I bought a carpet and steam cleaning business and not a rocket manufacturing company, because there's not a lot that you really have to learn to be able to do a decent job.
Sure.
And a lot of it comes down to showing up on time, showing up when you say you will. And if someone's upset, going that extra mile to try and fix whatever it is. And you could apply that lesson to basically any business.
Sure. No, but it's good. But it's a good analogy on that. So,
right.
But how did you first start? Like, what did you see an ad in the paper, so to speak, that said steam cleaning business for sale?
No, not exactly. So that's kind of the hardest part in this whole game of trying to buy businesses. I don't expect this to be my last purchase ever. But we'll see how it goes. But narrowing the search is pretty difficult when you're just starting, because at least me, I kind of enjoy business. I know a lot of people also get, business gets them going for whatever reason, and they're very interested in all these different ideas and opportunities. And it's very hard to narrow your search because there's just so much out there. If you look at a site like Biz Buy Sell, for example, that's BIZ for business, Biz Buy Sell. It lists tons of business opportunities out there. Sure. That's on a publicly listed side. Of course, you can get private, not listings, but private deals that maybe are off market if you happen to know a guy who might be interested in selling. So there's lots of ways to get deals, but that's where I found mine, or at least the broker who connected me to the person was through Biz Buy Sell. I asked about a different listing and they got me. Eventually, I found a different listing that they had through an email newsletter that they had sent. So.
Gotcha. Okay, so now you since you're busy being an attorney, I assume that you're not the guy who's actually doing the steam cleaning, right?
Correct. Okay.
So how big? Because again, this is we're focusing on the specific business that you bought, but it kind of fits into generically.
Absolutely,
people are interested in businesses. So this business, I guess, it produced basically $1,000 a day, right? $300,000 a year. And
not quite that evenly, but yes, it's spread out.
Kind of close.
Roughly, it's
sometimes because you can do more than one house in a day, depending upon how many rooms there are. That's how much I know about steam cleaning.
And it's not just houses too, but think businesses and on the commercial side as well. That's something we're trying to push into. But right.
So how many? But you have like one or two employees?
Yeah, so we got a couple technicians, and the first hire I made was a general manager who effectively become the day-to-day operator of the business. And even if that cut into most of the cash flow, if not all of it, off the bat, I wanted to take that step to try and get it to the next level. I could maintain it where it is, just working a few hours a week, because that's kind of what the former owner was doing. He worked part-time on the business, maybe a bit more than a few hours, but it was managing that way. But at that point, it's a part-time job. And I'd rather get to the point where my job is actually building and running effectively the management team. If I have, call it 3 or 4 businesses in a little portfolio I got going at some point.
Oh, interesting.
And I really want to focus on that and doing deals. I consider myself a deal guy. I like doing deals. So that's where I'm kind of thinking.
All right. Tell you what, we're going to cut to our second commercial break here. We want to make a mention also for Alcatraz Tours. Take a cruise to Alcatraz. I don't know if you've ever been there, but I have once, and it's really cool.
It is. It is.
Yeah, City Experiences does it, but just look online for Alcatraz Tours. You got to make a reservation though, because they get really busy. So check them out, Alcatraz Tours. All right, second trivia question. We're talking early American history. The first English settlements were failures. It was not until this crop was discovered that turned the economics around. Which crop are we talking about? Call 888-912-1190. First caller with the correct answer wins that tanning certificate. Stay with us. The Best of Investing will be right back. Don't touch that dial. Welcome back to the Best of Investing one more time. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with our special guest, Jack Duffley. Second trivia question. The first English settlements were failures. It was not until this crop was discovered that turned the economics around. Which crop are we talking about?
If I had to guess, it'd be tobacco.
Tobacco, very good. 2 for 2. I like it. Very good. Okay.
I'll have you know, Edward, I did get a history major in undergrad, so
Oh, you
I
did.
can't put
And
myself to
just so the
shame. But
audience knows, they did not know that I did not know that. So I'm not, this was not a setup here. What's interesting too is when the Pilgrims first came over, they figured they were going to try to be like the first century church and be, like true communism, one for all for one, everyone helping. But what they found out was just, as quote, godly as they wanted to be, everybody's got a little bit of greed within them. And if my family has one child and your family has 10 children and we're all sharing equally, I'm looking and I'm going, why am I working so hard for, because my family's getting so little. So I'll just kind of take it easy a little bit. And we'll all share evenly. Well, production went way down, and that's when they decided, you know what, maybe capitalism is really a better way to go.
private property, the tragedy of the
Yeah.
commons, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I taught an economics course in high school, and found
Okay.
a very interesting book that taught on this stuff. So going back, so if you don't mind us asking, since you've already mentioned this was doing a $300,000 business, how much did you buy the business for?
Sure. So this one I bought for around 175 grand. And that included a couple of vans and equipment. And that itself is probably about 60 grand
Yeah,
worth of
sounds about right.
stuff right there. So if the business really went to zero, I'd at least have that to
Mhm.
sell off. I really needed to, a little bit of insulation there, I guess, so you could look at it that way.
Okay,
Then it
but
also
but you have
came,
expenses, you have insurance, which is probably
yeah,
very high, the employees.
right. At least the way we structure our pay is our employees, at least once they get past kind of the junior stage of being a technician, they go from hourly to full commission. So they get a cut of the job. So that kind of helps manage expenses a bit. If our income goes up, the expenses go up, but income's up to cover it, and vice versa as well. If income goes down, then expenses will go down too. So but the guys prefer that because they're also incentivized to do some upselling at the jobs as well. Say for carpet cleaning, maybe they can upsell an odor treatment or a stain guard, and they're actually going to get a cut of that. And
Sure.
now they're incentivized, I think, in a much better way than if it was hourly, because then they're incentivized to take a long time, and that's not exactly what we
Yeah.
want to be doing.
And I
So
could see, like, other things like furniture, pillows, anything
yeah,
that needs
exactly,
some cleaning on that. Yeah.
exactly,
And you good customer service. If, a stain comes back, you go back and just
right.
fix it for free. Uh, what do you see as your net? How long, first of all, how long ago did you buy this business?
This is actually this year. This is back in January. So we're looking at
Okay.
about almost 6 months
Almost
now
6 months.
that I've owned it.
And are you on a positive cash flow?
Right now, I'm like basically neutral
No?
because I've reinvested pretty much everything into. We're bringing on a few. Uh, we're trying to do an outsourced sort of sales system with a couple offshore people. So we're going to try that
Oh,
to
interesting.
try and bust more into the commercial space. I kind of alluded to that earlier. It's higher
Do you do,
ticket.
do you
Go
do
ahead.
like Val packs, that sort of thing? For
No, we right now most of it's Google ads, and that's pretty much where most of our business comes from, and then a good amount of referral as well. And where our active efforts are, but I consider those kind of passive efforts. The active efforts are more towards commercial right now because we've managed to land a
Okay.
few kind of restaurant clients, some chain restaurants,
Oh,
and
okay.
I think that's where if we can get most of our business towards that, the higher ticket, arguably lower headache sort of
Yeah.
business, that would be great. Because right now we're about 80% residential.
Yeah. And I got to think that, this is one of those services that, you got to be within a certain range of price. You
Yeah,
can't be way too high or way too low. So
right.
if you have, so I could see where, if you guys do a really good job, you're going to get referrals because people are going to say,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, yeah, as long as I know roughly what it's going to cost, I'd like to have somebody who's really good, who's trustworthy. He's not going to, I come into the room and suddenly all the furniture's gone and in their truck.
right, exactly. But also to that number, just for reference, had I not hired a manager, had I not been like reinvesting now, it would be making about 70 grand a year. So I guess you could say I added about 50 to 70 in annualized expenses as we try to get to that next level of taking it to say $600,000 a year in sales. And then I think the business will be
That's actually very impressive because again, you're an attorney, so you have a regular job, but a
Mhm.
typical I mean, I'm going to guess a typical person buying a company like this would run it themselves mostly,
Yeah, it
right?
depends. It depends on, I think of one this size, yeah, probably. I kind of consider this sort of a starter business in that,
Yeah.
like, I don't see this being the last one, like I said, and there's a lot to learn, and that's really the point here. Is I'm trying to learn a lot about
Okay.
different sales strategies, for example, ways to, how to focus, how to incentivize people, dealing with emotions, all the great stuff that business
Yeah.
teaches you. Um, and dealing that's emotions both with employees and customers, of course.
Sure.
So
Oh, yeah.
and
And
taking
what and the old seller, the seller decided just what they were retiring just to get out.
That's often the case, but with this one, so I think the two most common cases, one is retirement, and then the other is they have another business, and that was
Oh,
the case
gotcha.
here. He had another business, so
Okay.
I wanted
All
to
right.
focus.
Well, it's funny. We haven't even talked about any kind of real estate, but this is very interesting about talking about these small businesses. So we're going to cut
It's
to our
fun.
third trivia question here. Before we do, I want to make a mention for Transcendence Theater. They've got a lot of good theater shows. I've been to a bunch of them. They're just fantastic. I believe those are coming up at the Jack London Square Historical Park. So it's kind of an outdoor theater when the weather's great and everything. You want to check it out. Transcendence Theater. All right, third trivia question. This political party was formed in Wisconsin in the 1850s and was largely supported by Northerners who favored its anti-slavery policies. What political party are we talking about? 888-912-1190. First caller with correct answer wins a tanning certificate. Stay with us. The best of investing. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the best of investing. Edward Brown, along with Jack Duffley here. And our third trivia question. This political party was formed in Wisconsin in the 1850s and was largely supported by Northerners who favored its anti-slavery policies. What political party are we talking about?
If I had to guess, is that the Republican Party?
It is the
Right.
Republican Party, Abraham Lincoln being its first president. Very good. 3 for 3, not bad. Of course,
Tremendous.
a history buff that helps quite a bit. So let's see here. The hiring part. How did you hire your employees? Did you take the existing ones that they had and basically like rehire them to begin with?
Yeah, yes, that to start, yes. So I really only inherited the way this business is set up. Have the two technicians, and we also have kind of outsourced kind of administrative help. It's cheaper than hiring someone full time,
Yeah.
but with the size we're at, that's what makes sense. At a certain point, we're going to want an in-house admin, which is what we're looking to do in the next month or two. But so you have kind of that administrative support on the back end. And they do a nice job. They've been working with this company for a while. But then
Okay.
there's the two technicians. So I kind of inherited all those systems and the two technicians. Eventually, we had to let one of those technicians go. Unfortunately, they've since been replaced. Then I hired the manager as well, and that was mostly through just posting on Indeed, interviewing a bunch of people. The manager actually hired the replacement technician himself, so
Okay.
that was nice to kind of give him some autonomy to do that. And so far, so good there. But just trying to get a feel for everything because we're all learning at the same time. So, but that's the fun part of business is when you're working through challenges and trying to make things better for the next run.
All right, good. I like it. I like it a lot. So what would you say are the risks of buying a small business?
The biggest risk, well, it kind of depends on the type of business, but the biggest risk I would say is yourself. If you're trying to be when you're the 100% owner, you can make all the decisions, and you kind of have to make all the decisions. Whether that's outsourcing those decisions or doing them yourself, that I guess that's one thing. But at the end of the day, it comes down to you. So there is a big risk there. And with a smaller business that might not be able to afford a great manager, for example, depending how you structure it, that can be a bit tricky. So you kind of have to be willing to understand your own limitations or at least find a way to bash through them. So that's probably the biggest risk. And then depending how you finance things, that could add a whole new layer as
And
well.
also the myth of I'm going to be entrepreneurial. I'm going to be self-employed, so I don't have to work as hard. And it's
Oh
like
yeah,
it's just the
right.
opposite.
But
So
I will say to that for people who hate their jobs, it like I'm looking at pool routes right now, just because I'm trying to learn a bit more about the business. Like people who service pools and
oh
clean
yeah,
them on a weekly basis. It's very common down here in Houston because
sure.
tons of people have pools and you need to clean them once you get them. And looking at a business like that, if you wanted to replace your job with something that you technically own, you own the customers and you can resell that list if you wanted to later. And you hate your job and you want to work outside and do whatever job that is, and do pool routes. You can go and pick up a pool route for basically one times the annual cash flow of that route, or one times the revenue of that route, and buy yourself a job. Like, go ahead. Like, and then it's all yours. And if you, like I said, if you want to resell the list, you can. If you want to hire someone else, you can. But you could say that about a lot of businesses, in that you just want to try something new and work on something else that isn't your current job. It's something you could try, and then you're actually building equity in something potentially.
But let's talk about the due diligence on when buying a business, because that's really important. You know, it's like, as an example, I know that someone once told me, he was a little bit of a operator, I'll call him. When I said, he goes, "Yeah, I've got a." This is many years ago with a self storage. He said, "Yeah, in order to get the highest value, you buy a bunch of locks and put them on all the empty ones, so it looks like it's 100% full." But I mean, that's fraud, you know. So how do you do your due diligence on, like, what did you do for the carpet cleaning business?
Yeah, that'll depend a bit on how they've kept their records. Thankfully, my guide had pretty much everything digital, so it was easy to ask for many things. There are some businesses, I think it's pretty common, the laundromats, or they're very mom and pop, and it's all done by paper, and they don't know what last month's cash flow was. But and that can be a bit tough. Sometimes you just got to take a leap of faith with some of those things. I'm not saying I'd recommend that, but yeah, when you're getting into it, you'll see the advertised numbers, and they're often a bit skewed for whatever reason. Or maybe they're like a previous year's numbers. So the first step is to ask for more information. What are the previous year's financials? Can I see like your whole income statement? And then eventually, if you get under contract, you can probably ask for the tax returns to kind of verify that way. So it's really just asking questions. Some of it comes with experience, what to ask, and that's where having an experienced attorney perhaps, or experienced agent, or someone on your side to kind of help.
Because I can easily see, it's like an explanation. Why is the tax return showing so low and the financial statement showing so high?
Right. Exactly.
Why? I don't report all my income. It's like,
it's usually not even that. It's often that people are reporting maybe personal expenses through the business. So backing out those expenses, and you're like, whoa, what is that, $50,000 adjustment right there? Oh, those are my 3 personal vehicles that I run through the business. I'm like, that sounds like tax fraud, but not my problem. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Or whatever it is. You apply. I saw that from time to time, just large expenses that were run through it that probably shouldn't have. Without knowing much, I can't say either way, but just smelled a little weird. So, but you just got to ask questions and look through it. There's not an easy way around it. And that's definitely your most important stage before purchasing, is just making sure you're looking at what you think you're looking at.
Gotcha. And we have just a little bit of time left here. What about the financing part of it? How you said that, okay, you can do your own thing, like, do a HELOC on your house.
Right.
You can get a small business administration loan. How easy is that?
Easy. It's relatively easy, we'll say. It's probably a bit tougher than maybe your average mortgage, because typically with an SBA loan, it's going to take a few months to close. They're going to look at the business. They're going to look at your personal financials as well. They're going to put a lien on most of your stuff, probably, meaning that they get a claim if you don't pay the loan on all your personal assets, or whatever amount it is. That's for SBA.
And what were the terms? You know what? We're going to have to cut to our next break. When we come back, I want to find out what the terms were that you were able to get on the SBA loan. All right, sure. Stay with us. The Best of Investing will be back with some closing comments. Don't touch that dial. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Jack Duffley. So Jack, tell us, what kind of terms did you get with the SBA loan for your steam cleaning, carpet and steam cleaning business?
So I personally didn't get an SBA loan, but terms are typically going to be 7 to 10 years at, I think right now you're probably looking at 7 to 8% per year. So not terrible, and real nice because it's fixed and spread out over 10 years. It isn't so bad when you can buy a business for 2 times.
Is it interest only, or is it fully amortized?
It's amortized.
Over 10 years?
Yes,
that's actually pretty high cash flow negative then.
Well,
If it's going
no.
to be fully amortized over 10 years.
Well, when you're considering that you're buying the business typically for 2 times annual free cash flow, not really.
Well, that part's true. I mean, you can't
When
buy
you
a
think of it in
mortgage
real
like
estate
that.
terms,
Yeah,
absolutely,
that'd be
it's terrible.
expensive.
But you typically have a much higher cash flow yield on these businesses if
True.
you can run it well
If you can
or
run it,
continue
yeah.
running it well. That's the big if. So that's where a lot of the risk is, and making sure that the cash flows from 2 years ago are not just some anomaly that they're pulling forward. Hey, look at the average cash flow for the last 5 years.
Sure.
But one of those years was crazy and you saw a lot of that with kind of the COVID era. So you got to watch out for some of that. And that's where it's a bit of a judgment call there. But
Let me ask
yeah,
you,
terms. Yep.
with your employees that you have, are they? I know they're working on commission, but are they working full time?
Yes.
Oh,
And
okay.
at times when we don't have enough jobs in a week, we might try to kind of find some more, maybe working around the shop or all that sort of that's kind of common in January, February. It's pretty slow, a couple months.
Or get them to go that new pool business you're going to buy.
Yeah, I don't know about that. It's kind of a different that's kind of a different animal. I don't want to distract them. But
True.
I'd rather
How much can they? How much generally can a worker make in that business under commission basis generally?
I mean, it's really going to depend on your ticket size, but some weeks, at least in the first few months here, sometimes our technicians will get over $1,000 a week. They're keeping all their tips too. Occasionally be closer to 400 or 500 in a terrible week, but it's usually somewhere between there. Call it 700 to 800 on average. But as we get bigger tickets, we're seeing the average week come up, which is great for everyone. So
And that's based on
kind of
8 hours a day work.
Yeah, it's often quite a bit less actually.
Yeah.
You might be looking at 9 to 3 in many cases, or even just a half day, if depending on the size of that first job and how long it takes, and if there's 1 or 2 guys on it. So the days can kind of vary widely. But
Plus, there's got to be a minimum. Like sometimes people won't need a whole house; they'll need just a couple of rooms, and you probably have some minimum.
We do have an order minimum, and that's pretty common. And also, if it goes beyond a certain distance, then we'll up that minimum.
That was my other part.
Time lost.
So
right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's a lot of considerations there. I think the upper bound might be, call it $80-ish thousand if they're just busy all the time, got a lot of nice big tickets, $80,000 a year. But I think on average, you're probably looking somewhere 40 to 50. So it's a respectable living, especially here in Houston, where the cost of living is low. And just everything's cheaper. I mean, I don't know about California, that might not get you too far, but especially in the Bay Area.
How many, what would an average 2,500 square foot house cost to get?
Well, let's see if they're doing, if that's like 4 beds, you might be looking at somewhere around $160 for, if it's just all carpet. If they're doing a bunch of tile, it might be much higher. But our order minimum is 129 right now. And that includes 3 rooms of carpet, or 3 areas of
very reasonable. I might just have you guys fly up to California. I'll pay for your airplane ticket to come here.
Believe it or not, we're kind of towards the premium side of pricing for that sort of service. Some of the bigger budget guys might be closer to 109 for 3 areas. So we do charge a bit of a premium, but we have really good service and good ratings as a result. So we kind of want to lean that way. And as we move more towards commercial, we might even raise that limit just to kind of cut out some of the lowest value ones, but we'll see. Well, Jack, just trying to do good work either way.
I appreciate it. Jack Duffley, thank you so much for being our guest. Here's our thoughts for the day. So I used to think I was indecisive, but I'm not so sure now. And whatever you give 100%, unless it's donating blood. And lastly, I'm never buying Velcro again. It's just a total ripoff. And I would love to get paid to sleep. That would be my dream job. All right. Tune in next week to The Best of Investing. We're going to be giving away more free prizes for answering trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm Edward Brown, wishing you the best of investing. So long.